Hello and welcome to Sport for Business. I am joined today by two individuals from Paralympics Ireland, one from on the sidelines and one from very much at the heart of the sporting action. We're here to talk about a new fundraising campaign, the Next Level. It was launched on the Late Late Show with Ryan Tubridy last Friday, and the aim is to raise a substantial amount of money, which is going to help bring Ireland's most successful international sports team of recent years to the peak of their abilities for the Paralympic Games taking place in Tokyo across this August and September. I'll come to you first, Trevor O'Rourke, the head of commercial at Paralympics Ireland. Tell us a little bit about Next Level, what it is, what people can do, and why it is that we need it at this point in time.
Okay, I suppose Next Level is about two things, awareness and funding. Awareness, firstly, we need to get our story out there. I should say really that the Next Level campaign was originally created last year, and in fact was first presented to all our partners at our workshop in February of 2020, and was to be an awareness only campaign for Tokyo to help build a brand and to help me attract in more sponsors. Of course, then the whole world fell apart. And we went into lockdown, games were postponed. And then we started to realize, A, that we couldn't spend money on campaigns like this, and B, that there were so many additional costs coming in that our priorities had to shift to fundraising, really. So it has a dual purpose. We need to educate the general public as to who we are, who our athletes are, the fact that they are elite athletes, and also to raise funds to help us bridge the financial gap for Tokyo, but also into the future. The fact is that standards are rising in parasport right across the board and have been really since London in 2012. And we're losing ground because we're not putting the investment in to find the new athletes. And that's something we need to do. So it's short term, it's about Tokyo and bridging a cost gap. And longer term, it's about Paris 2024 and ultimately LA 2028 and finding a new group of athletes and creating the pathways for them.
Okay, Nicole, you're part of the new wave of athletes that's come through. Trevor and I were hanging around and seeing in Beijing. I remember there was 3 minutes of highlights coverage that came out of the Beijing Games in 2008. In London, that was transformed by those that went ahead, that put in magnificent performances, that put Paralympic athletes on the map and on the radar for the Irish public as well as around the world. We moved then onto Rio, and now we're in Tokyo. We've hosted the European Championships here in Dublin. What was it that inspired you to get onto that path, to actually see yourself as an elite athlete?
To be honest, it was many years ago. So obviously when I was born with a disability. And then when I was watching the Paralympic Games in Beijing, I was watching Ellie Simmonds and I turned to my parents and I was like, oh my God, I want to be like her. She's small just like me. Me thinking nothing of that. And then obviously I got into swimming. And from there, swimming turned into competitive swimming. And then I started out on the senior team in 2015. So I went to my first senior competition in March of 2015. And I actually won a silver medal, which it was a big surprise for me, to be honest, because obviously it was my first competition. And then there I qualified for the World Championships in Glasgow that July. Again, went to Glasgow, swam 6 events, made 6 finals, and then obviously in Glasgow I qualified for Rio 2016. And obviously Rio was absolutely crazy for me because, well, for one, I was 14 at the time, so I was the youngest member of the Irish team. And then I went out and swam 5 heats and 5 finals. So that's kind of where the seed was planted.
And a fine seed and a fine tree that's grown out of it as well. You were a star of the show in Dublin in terms of your personality as well as your performance. And then the hope will have always been Tokyo 2020. You plan your campaign, you put your training in place, and then COVID strikes. How much of an impact has it been on you as an athlete to have to put all of your preparation back by 12 months?
Well, to be honest, for me, I was affected obviously as an athlete, but also I took a year out of school to train for Tokyo, simply because at the minute I train in Blanchardstown in Dublin, and I live in Portarlington in Leash. And when I decided to move to Blanchardstown, like to swim, obviously after Rio 2016, my school runs from 9 to 4, and I'd start swimming at 5 o'clock every evening. So then when I decided to move to the NAC, my school agreed for me to finish school 40 minutes early so I could get to training on time. And then I did this from all the way from second year all the way up to the end of transition year. But after transition year, obviously I'd be going into fifth year, and it'd be my 7 core subjects. So my school kind of turned to us, and like they were very supportive, but they just said, look, unfortunately, because it's your 7 core subject, it might be a vital important subject at the end of the day. So it wasn't possible to do that anymore. And then it was kind of like a joint decision between my mom, my dad, and obviously myself and my school to take the year out of school and train for Tokyo. But obviously that year now has turned into 2 years out of school. So that was like a huge impact just in itself. But then another reason was obviously because I'm a swimmer. Most athletes across obviously Ireland and the world, they could adapt to the new normal, as people would say, a bit easier than swimmers could, because when Tokyo was postponed, all pools across Ireland closed. So I was out of the pool for 2.5 months, and the longest a swimmer's ever been out of the pool is 3 weeks. So it did have a huge impact on me, because obviously I had to change my sport basically. So instead of swimming every day, I went and cycled about 15k around my local area to get that bit of endurance training in. And it was quite challenging, but then it did open obviously a lot of doors. Like, I'm fortunate enough that I'm only 18, that I will be training for Tokyo, Paris and LA, whereas there is them 30-year-olds who might have trained for Tokyo and then wanted to retire after Tokyo, whereas obviously that's been delayed an extra year. It can have a much more effect on them than it would have on me.
So a huge impact then. And you're absolutely right. An athlete can still get out and run around their 5K. It's harder to do that in terms of swimming, unless you live by the coast, but sea swimming is a
exactly.
Anyway, so but give us confidence that you will be going back to school after this is all passed.
I think so, yeah. I think if not school, I will go and do something. Like, I will go and do a college course or something along the lines of a leaving cert, if it might not be in a school. But I do plan on going back and completing a leaving cert, yeah.
Yeah. Little could you have imagined that you'd take 2 years out, well, 1 year out of school, but you'd still probably end up with as much time in school as those of your peers and colleagues that are doing their leaving cert this year. So
exactly.
Anyway, everything for a reason, I guess. The very best of luck with that. And Trevor, like that, Nicole's story is one which is replicated across our Paralympic swimmers, athletes, in the track, on the field, in all of the other sports as well, in cycling and table tennis. Like, the scale of it is huge.
It is, but there's a couple of things
financial backup for what Paralympics Ireland is providing the support for. Is there a figure that you can put on that?
Yeah, there is. I know that our shortfall for Tokyo is approximately 500,000, and it's made up of a couple of components, a lot of logistical issues like flights and accommodation that have just been affected by the restrictions that will be placed on it, but also a lot of additional costs in the high performance programs because of COVID testing, because of PPE, because of additional medical services. So it stacks up fairly quickly. We were I was certainly reluctant to put a target on anything when we launched the campaign, but that's an indicative figure. But you should bear in mind, it's not just about Tokyo. We're trying to build things for the future. We're trying to attract more people into para sport. It's interesting to hear Nicole talk about her role model and what attracted her into the pool. And she will be the role model for the next generation. Even though you're quite young, you will be the role model for somebody else. And We need that. We need to build the awareness of all our athletes, the commitment they make, the hard work they put in, the determination they put into being elite athletes, and to get them the proper recognition, because we still don't have that equality of recognition, I believe, with other elite athletes. And that's something we're trying to change all the time.
I think that's very much a case in point as well. I know that Ellen called Ryan Tubridy to account on Friday night for referring to you as Olympians, and of course you stand apart and you stand proud as Paralympians. So it's going to be August and September that it comes along. The process of giving is very simple, so that you can go to the website and you can pay by credit card, debit card, PayPal. You can pay as little as €2 up to more than that. Nicole, if I can finish with you, if there was a message that you had for the general public out there as to what you would hope that they might do over the coming weeks of this campaign as it runs.
To be honest, I've said this before, every athlete, obviously people are different, but they shouldn't see anyone as being any different to any other athlete. We're all equal, we all train just as hard, we all work as hard, we all make the sacrifices. So the only real difference is we might look a little like, I'm a bit small, someone might not have an arm, someone might not have a leg, but that shouldn't be seen as anything different. So can you give us the support that you'd give any other athlete across Ireland or across the world?
That's great. And more, if they give in terms of a size to match your personality and your performance, then you'll be doing very well indeed. So the very best of luck. It's the Next Level is the campaign. Paralympics.ie is the web address to go to, and please do so now, because these are elite athletes who deserve all of the backing that you and I and us all can give to them. Thank you very much.